Hey design enthusiasts! Welcome to Next in Line Design, a podcast by the World Design Organization's Young Designers Circle. We're all about embracing a new mindset in design, one that's bold, innovative, and impactful. We're here to connect with the next wave of design talent and explore how you can use your creativity to make a real impact. Get ready for fresh ideas and inspiration from young designers around the world who are reshaping the industry. We're here to spark conversations, inspire change, and explore new ideas in design. But remember, these are just our perspectives on one big, evolving field. Please note that the opinions expressed in this podcast are those of the hosts and guests and do not necessarily reflect the official views of the World Design Organization or its affiliates. Let's dive in and see what's next in line. Hi, everyone, and welcome to the Next in Line Design podcast. I'm Alexis Divis, your host for this episode. I'm a multidisciplinary designer based in the New York City area and currently working in the healthcare industry. In today's episode, we'll be chatting with one of my YDC peers, Alicia Storie. Alicia is a sustainable designer and the founder of the multi-award-winning climate-conscious interior design studio, A Design Story. She specializes in designing spaces that embody biophilic principles, enhance well-being, and prioritize the use of sustainable materials. In addition to her design work, she's actively engaging as a speaker and a workshop host, sharing her experience and wealth of knowledge in climate design. After graduating with her interior design degree, Alicia commenced her career at a prominent interior design studio in London, where she collaborated on large-scale commercial products. But her strong commitment to sustainability led her to research sustainable interior design and natural building techniques, ultimately leading to the founding of A Design Story in 2020. So I'm really excited to introduce you guys to Alicia today. She's amazing. She's so great. So let's get started with our conversation today. Welcome, Alicia.
Thanks so much, Alexis. It's great to be on the podcast. And yeah, I'm really excited to contribute because there's been a wealth of really interesting conversations so far. Thanks for having me.
Of course. So let's dive in. I feel like we should get started at the beginning of your journey. So I'd love to have maybe a quick intro to how you would describe your design journey. Obviously, we talked about your interior design degree, your study of, sustainable materials and interior design. So tell me a little bit more about how you started out.
Yeah, of course. So essentially, like you said, I basically did study interiors, and then I went to work in a studio which focused on interior design. However, working in the industry, I saw firsthand the sheer amount of waste being produced, and it kind of led me to a place where I wanted to be able to use my design background and my skill set, but get to a place where I could understand how to weave climate to the center of the design process. So I eventually left that chapter in my career and then went on to research different sustainable interior design methods, which took me to initially to do some workshops on natural building. And for me, this was so fascinating because you could build structures with 4 simple materials with sand, straw, soil, and water. You can sculpt beautiful organic structures, which technically can become part of that landscape at the end of their use as well. So this was such a beautiful tactile process where you could engage directly with the materials and have this really deep connection to the space that you're building. Working very closely with the surrounding landscape, thinking about the positioning of the trees and the thickness of the wall for thermal mass, like all these different aspects was a really beautiful kind of way to look at interior design and architecture and look at how we used to build and how we've come so far away from that. But there's so much knowledge in these beautiful natural techniques of building. So that was the initial introduction into sustainability, really thinking about it from a lens of bringing it to the core of the design process. My thesis at uni was on a sustainable supermarket project, but then having that space to research further then ultimately led me to set up a design story where sustainability comes to the center of each project. And yeah, like we also mentioned, materials is a huge part of that, because it's a huge part of the end result is the materials that go to construct it. So there's a combination of reuse, as well as I'm very interested in working with biomaterial artists and designers as well, creating beautiful biomaterials which have amazing capabilities in interior design as well. So yeah, essentially that's how it kind of led to me finding a design story, through essentially having this interest in sustainability and not seeing that there was many climate design jobs at that time. So I designed my own essentially.
I think that's so amazing. And I really love how you mentioned like that sort of aha moment of working in the industry, realizing how wasteful some of the processes are. And I think that's something that a lot of young designers can relate to. When we're in school, everything is very theoretical. But then once you get your first job or you really start learning about manufacturing processes and bringing your work to life, um, noticing like how much waste there can be really intimidating and in some senses like a little bit paralyzing because it's like, oh my goodness, I'm a designer because I want to make the world a better place or whatever someone's personal mission might be. And normally I think our personal missions are about, we want to make the world better, we want to make people's lives easier. So oh my gosh, like how do I do that? How can I do that the right way while being eco-conscious and friendly to the earth? So I think it's awesome that you had that aha and then you immediately like started doing the work to figure out, how am I going to tackle this? How am I going to address this? How am I going to create my own opportunity? Which I think is just so amazing. One thing that I think is really interesting about what you do is that, in one way you have an operating business, you're offering these design services, but you're also offering your wealth of knowledge and you speak a lot and you do workshops and you teach people about sustainability. So it seems like you've sort of got like this service and this like professorship or, whatever you would call it. So if you had to put your mission and vision as a designer into words, what would you say?
Yeah, that's a really good kind of summary of what I do. Thanks for that, Alexis. So yeah, essentially the kind of core of it in relation to what you're saying is that the research that I've done in sustainable design goes into projects when I create spaces. So I tend to design homes, but I also design some spaces like hospitality spaces as well. And for example, if we take an example of a home, I'll spend a lot of time researching different materials and sourcing secondhand items to come into the form and working with other artists to bring in the storytelling of how to the sustainable storytelling within to the fabric of the interior design as well. All these different layers. But how I feel is that it shouldn't be isolated to one client and one project. There's so much value in these conversations and sharing learnings from each other, especially. And that's what's so amazing about the Young Designer Circle as well. Like everyone with their own different perspectives coming together, and there's so much value in those conversations. So that's kind of what led me to move into speaking about it in the form of talks, workshops, consultancy services as well, so that it's much more accessible and it's an open conversation. So yeah, I think there's a kind of hand in hand in the kind of activism side of things, not kind of gatekeeping learnings, and having these open conversations. So yeah, my mission is to help kind of help support other designers as well as gain support from them in the community of things, because it can be very daunting, like thinking about climate in a lot of detail, and to have that community of people around all doing similar things, all using their skill sets to take climate action, is a really kind of beautiful, empowering element. So yeah, essentially my mission is kind of that side of things in the community. There's so much power collectively, as well as continuing to design sustainable spaces, using biophilic design principles to enhance people's well-being.
Yeah, I think powerful is a great word. You're definitely empowering other young designers to learn about these things. And I feel like sustainability is a lot of leading by example because it's so intimidating. So when we can find people that we look up to or admire who are interested in these spaces and sort of like set the way to help other people learn about these topics, I think that's so awesome. So I would love to know, could you talk a little bit about maybe a case study of a project that you loved or a project that you're currently working on so we can see a little bit more of your process?
Of course, yeah. So there was one project which was a tiny house, and that was located in the Highlands in Scotland. And essentially, the tiny house, the brief from the client was to incorporate as much reuse as possible within the design. So, and then to bring in different biomaterials or sustainable materials, which are new in alignment with that, to create this end product. So it was a really beautiful challenge, because the client was had the same kind of vision of sustainability, so we could take it really far, down to sourcing all of the different elements which come to form the main aspects of the home. So as a team, we sourced windows and doors secondhand, different appliances for the tiny house as well, and even down to the can opener and the door. Every there was so much focus on reuse, so it was a really wonderful challenge, and it showed the capabilities and the possibilities of doing that. And the way we did that was we had a store space on site, so that over a long period of time, a lot of these materials could be gathered so that they were ready to go when the build process started, and it didn't slow down kind of a traditional build process. So that was a kind of a big focus on that side. And then on the interior design, we created a biophilic design approach. So just to kind of as a recap, biophilic design is looking into nature as a source of inspiration to create a space which gives that same feeling of when we're in nature and we just feel really calm and relaxed, and everything feels a little bit softer and simpler. It's that same principle, bringing that inside a space, is biophilic interior design. So we can use lots of different natural references in terms of the materials, the patterns, the forms, the colors, to create this feeling in connection with nature. So, which is the only interior design style which is proven to enhance well-being. So there's so many benefits to it. So we used that design approach to design the decorative elements of the tiny house, looking at the colors, a lot of natural finishes within the space. And then we also thought about the full user experience for people as well. So for the tiny house is bookable, so people can stay in it for like a short-term let kind of setup. So we thought about the first interactions on the website, and we worked with a sustainable web designer so that even the colors used in different aspects of the website looked at sustainability to reduce its carbon footprint. And then in the kind of communication to the customer base as well, looking at trying to encourage public transport where possible. Even though it's a remote setup, there were some options of public transport which we encouraged. And then also creating a guidebook as well for the customers who come into the tiny house, so that they have lots of local recommendations which all prioritize sustainability. So for example, there was lots of vegan restaurants and cafes or sustainable restaurants mentioned on there. Lots of activities which weren't typically maybe the more known ones which you need to take a car to, but beautiful walks which are accessible by foot or bike from the site. And then also in the offer of food for guests as well. There was a vegetable garden right outside for access, and then also there was the recipe books referenced local produce of that time of year as well, to encourage sustainable behaviours within the home itself. And then, like I mentioned earlier, it was woven into the storytelling of the space as well. So we worked with an artist who was commissioned to create a mural in the tiny house. And essentially, when at first glance, it looks like this absolutely beautiful mural with lots of like wildflowers and different insects and animals within it. But then when you look closer, you can see that we highlight specific endangered species within that region. So the storytelling, or like all of the work that went into the sustainability of the fabric, we wanted to come through in the interior design as well. So yes, I think the user experience is just as important as the materiality when we're designing spaces.
Yeah, I think that's a great approach because you're looking at sustainability as an end-to-end experience. And I feel like end-to-end experiences are definitely big right now in the design world. I know that, like, even though I work in a very different industry in healthcare on digital platforms, like, my team is called the experience design chapter.
Mhm.
And we're called that because we want to look at the end-to-end experience of all of our patients, of, whatever user we might have. And so I love that, even though you're in a very different industry, like, it's that same way of thinking. Like, how can I meet someone at the beginning of their journey?
Mhm.
Whether it be the person actually owning the home or the person visiting on a short-term rental. I also loved, and something that I didn't know was that you collected everything beforehand. It reminds me of when people are filming like TV or movies. Like, let's say if it's set in the 50s, they'll like go and they'll get a bunch of jukeboxes and whatever, and hide them in a warehouse. Like, it sounds kind of the same, which I feel like is so, so cool. So thank you so much for sharing that bit about your process. So with this tiny house project, um, one thing that I think is so cool about that is, like, how do you find the kind of client who aligns with your values, or who might not know about sustainability but would be interested in going on that journey with you? So, what kind of clients do you look to attract? How do you find them? And do you have a dream client?
Yeah, this is yeah, it's a nice question. So and it's quite a yeah, I mean, it's quite an interesting one to answer in terms of the approach has changed over the years, but essentially, because I'm very kind of, I think from setting up my studio, I was very clear on the values and the offer of sustainability being central to the design process. It therefore speaks to clients which have a deep interest in sustainability already. So when I first started out, there was much more of a conversation about, okay, I can provide these interior design services, but just so you know, everything will have a lens of sustainability as a focus. And it was more like it felt like I was having to have those conversations quite regularly with clients. But then very kind of like shortly after that, there was more of a deep value for, of course, the spaces that we live in should be sustainable. There's much better for our health, material health, because so many different chemicals, off-gas toxic chemicals, or yeah, designing spaces like we talked about, which are proven to enhance well-being, is, and it makes sense.
Mhm.
So essentially, that side of things, it felt very kind of clear on that. But then when the kind of conversations and around sustainability in the news and like became much more prominent, it's deeply sad that that has led to this. But then essentially now I don't have those conversations. They don't exist. People understand the value and the need for sustainable design, because if it's not sustainable design, is it good design? So
Right.
yeah. So essentially, yeah, my target market tend to very much be in alignment. So it's really quite beautiful, because you can then take it really far, because that's often a barrier. if you have a boss who's not on the same alignment on sustainability, or if you have a client who kind of likes the idea, but when it comes to the crunch of sustainability, they kind of backtrack. So yeah, I feel lucky that communicating like my values then kind of aligns with people who are looking to create spaces which align with their values.
I think that's amazing. And it's so cool to see, like, to hear that there was a change. Like, at first it was a discussion and an education moment, and now it's like you can find those people that align. I feel like that just speaks to the impact that that people who preach about sustainability and teach about sustainability have. So cool. So, stepping away from like your client side for a moment and going into your designer to designer world, one thing that I think is really cool about you is that you're involved in a lot of design events and design communities. And something that I think a lot of young designers struggle with is getting involved in the community as a post grad, as starting their first job early in career. How do you do that? Because when you're in school, you're already connected. So, can you tell me more about how you find opportunities for yourself in design communities or how you connect with other designers?
Mhm. Yeah, of course. So yeah, in terms of design communities, so yeah, the Young Designer Circle is a lovely one. In having that yeah, wide range of perspectives, because we're all from different parts of the world, which is so beautiful to all to kind of be in the same virtual room and have conversations around how do we define good design and yeah, sustainability. So that is a kind of lovely one. And then also I work with the Design Council as well. So they on helping to support their Design for Planet mission, which is amazing. And they have the festival around that. So there's lovely kind of opportunities to come from that. But then a lot of it is very local as well. So yeah, I guess running a sustainable interior design studio, a lot of it is the materials and then the trades which link to that. So yeah, working with sustainable architects or joiners, which have a priority on the kind of detailing to design for disassembly, or to design using mono materials rather than composites, so that yeah, so mono materials, for example, within an interior would be to design a joinery bench, for example, like a sofa bench, using one material for each component rather than materials mixed together, because then it's easier to reuse that material beyond
Mm.
initial use. So I think that the kind of networking, the local aspect of things is equally important in having those kind of yeah, that key network of people that you can kind of work with and align with to deliver a project. And yeah, there's also a lot of kind of, I guess, referral in the kind of local side of things, working with other designers and people in sustainable construction. So yeah, a combination of the two, I would say. Mhm.
Yeah, that's great. I think keying in on the fact that you don't have to like go super big at first or like, run to the national organization or anything. Like there's always something that starts in your community. So I think that's, a great message to get out. And speaking of your community, are there any designers in your circle, in your network right now that are inspiring you or anything like that?
Yeah, I think there's masses of designers which are inspiring me. I think the whole kind of so yeah, the at the World Design Congress, it will be with Design Council, and the programming in general for speakers there is amazing. So I'd really recommend checking out previous Design Council Design for Planet festivals as well. And but in general, I think that very presently is all of us in the young designer circle. It feels really kind of refreshing, and I think often when things feel yeah, quite overwhelming with the world, but then also I feel I have a very like optimistic mindset, because there's yes, like there is a lot of damage that has been done, but kind of having a mindset which is more like pessimistic, it is not going to kind of push through to change. So I think having this kind of like peer-to-peer community, all hearing about everyone else's great research and studies and work all within different but linking fields is quite liberating and empowering as well, to kind of feel like, of course we're all kind of like we're all kind of contributing towards it. But yeah, it's not something that we have to do alone. Of course, there's so much amazing expertise out there, and I'm very much a cheerleader for people. So I love to kind of lift people up, and if someone is looking for a recommendation of another designer, like put them out there. So yeah, I think in the kind of community of things, but yeah, I would say the Young Designer Circle is probably the most inspiring element at the moment with other designers.
That's amazing, and I would say that I'm partial. And I think you've also, given some great advice for young designers too, right? Like connect, have an opportunistic mindset. One of my favorite quotes about designers or about being a young designer is that the best part of being young in any industry is not knowing the rules yet. So it gives you an opportunity to be opportunistic and positive and excited about what you can do, because you don't really know what the restrictions are yet. And there's a lot of power in that. Because there might be opportunities that other people have shut down simply because the phrase is like they've been beaten down by the man, right? Like they've gotten, too many times like that's not feasible, or we can't do that, or it's not time for that yet, but we don't know that. So that's something that I love about being a young designer. And so we've had a great conversation, and I mean, so many interesting things about you, Alicia. You just are so cool. So I want to leave you with one final question, maybe to ponder for a second. But this is a question I love to ask our YDC members because, like you said, everyone is working on something different and has a very different background. So if there were no restraints at all, if you could redesign any product, brand, or experience in the entire world, something that already exists, what would it be and how would you approach it differently?
Yeah, that's a good question. So I would very much like to, I think it'd be very interesting to design like a wellness experience, so that it focuses on the biophilic design in terms of the design, and there are enhancements of well-being on that side of things, but then there's also direct correlations with all the kind of community aspects of things as well, bring people in to have that kind of support network as well, because there's so much value in that side of things. So yeah, maybe like a wellness spa experience with a focus on community and biophilic design in Scotland would be great. So yeah.
That would be so cool. I love that. Well, thank you so much, Alicia, for taking the time to hop on the podcast and chat with me today. It was so great hearing about your experience and your journey. And I hope our young designers are leaving this chat feeling very inspired.
Great. Thank you so much, Alexis. It was great to chat.
Next in Line Design is a podcast for designers by young designers. We hope that you really enjoyed today's episode. We've got some really exciting conversations coming up that we can't wait to share with you. Every episode, you're going to have the chance to meet a new member of the YDC. So enjoy our rotating cast of designers and feel free to reach out in the comments just to say hey, maybe to share some feedback, your story, or tell us more about the kind of conversations that you'd like to be hearing. In the meantime, make sure to subscribe to the WDO's channels and hit that notification bell so that you never miss an episode. Thanks again for tuning in. We'll see you back here soon with more of Next in Line Design.